So, I guess I made a video a few seconds ago. However, I think there needs to be, it, I can't end it there because there's another thing that is bothering me about all these cases that have became hot air inside of a closed system that is about to explode, and that is the mentality that the war on drugs has forced on us as as Americans through the presidential administration of Harry S. Truman through today, and the justifications for it. Now, before now, okay, well, I can just move through this. Now, think of it like this. Before that time, before um, because there are a lot of things that was happening during the Harry S. Truman administration, and one of those things was there were terrible race riots that were going on in Oklahoma and in other parts of the country. And need I remind the people that was that had grandparents who were survivors of Oklahoma or who were survivors of these race riots that are yet to be mentioned in history, that there was a lot of propaganda that was being circulated around black people in general. And one of those movies is one of my favorite movies that I love watching all the time. Was done on a book called The Klansman, and the Klansman was made dramatized into a movie by a film producer named D.W. Griffith. Now, what is this? This particular form of propaganda. That I choose to start here because it racialized the the mindset of the whites that were around that time, because it gave a depiction of blacks that were uh, freed after the Civil War that plunged the South into anarchy. Um, so one of the now, if you remember some of the justifications for slavery back then, was that these people were uncivilized. They do not have the capability to do this, and they were religious materials. Trust me, I've done the research with Ferguson, not the city. There's a author, Sir Edmund Ferguson, that circulated things like the Negro, the Serpent, the Devil, the Negro, the Serpent, and the Devil. There are also people before then, which I was Mormon at the time, so I got introduced to Brigham Young, which I believe they were of the same mindset, and that Brigham Young declared all Africans and Negroes being seeds of Satan, and of the seed of Cain back then. And there was this double whammy of propaganda. One, if I were to go before the 20s, and I'll get back to the propaganda, or the change, the massive shift in the propaganda in politically in the media, projected at white people in the 20s, and moving towards where, and this is projected at white people, showing blacks as or being derogatory against blacks. But if I go a little bit before that, in the 1900s, coming into the 1910s, before the 1920s, there was this huge industry. Even in the 1800s, there's this huge entertainment industry depicting the life of the Negro, as being a joyous, um, a thing, not necessarily a thing of envy or anything like that, but a thing of entertainment. Okay, now let's fast forward to the 1920s and talk about this film that D.W. Griffith again came out with. Again, a very pivotal film because it now shows how blacks using digital media can has plunged the nation into anarchy, and it gave whites the idea that they were the ones who save the nation and keep the nation together and keep their race pure and superior. Now, how does this relate to the drug war? I'll tell you how. It relates to the drug war in its first the way it was first in contrived about and brought upon, and the reasons it was introduced into the white voting public. Now again, we got to understand that a war on drugs like that, while there were black congressmen that, in my opinion, was really pressured, but they should have had more grit to not turn their backs and see how a law like this could turn around and hurt his people in his people in his community. Also, pass this thing, but the law under Harry S. Truman's administration, and there's a lot of things that are blaming Nixon. Nixon is not solely blamed for this, but under Harry S. Truman's administration, there were problems in the South with the white workers competing with the Mexican workers and the black laborers that were down south. This is thoroughly researched. It's undeniable. You can go to your Black Power ministry and stuff like. As if people who listen to me right now are going to go and listen to anything Farrakhan says, but it's very. These are Jewish again. These Jewish authors, these white authors, and in their archives, their very own archives, speaks for them speaks for themselves. So there isn't we what we don't have going on here is me developing some sort of propaganda out of thin air. However, um, now that was the original intent. The original reason was to criminalize these people's behavior. But what has happened beyond then was for example, Reefer Madness. Well, one of the things that they said and that was said about were in Reefer Madness was that marijuana makes you want to commit murder. Marijuana makes you want to commit suicide. Marijuana, things that are totally unfounded. But it was not just that. It was things that were said about the Negro and marijuana. It said, okay, well, if Negro smokes marijuana or things like that, he's become dangerous. And you know, it was not just that and marijuana or that. It was that and other drugs. Just like when crack cocaine was introduced into the community. Even before then, there's propaganda to where there's a black man like the King Kong scenario, the big black ape and the white woman climbing up to the top of the building where he but don't get me started on that. But he has this black man with fuck eyes holding up this white woman, and the title reads he's high on crack, and there's a cop in the background shooting him several times, and none of the bullets kill him because they bounce off of him because the crack has made him invincible. And they've done that with weed. And not only that, they're you go into the University of Cambridge. It's Cambridge, and it wasn't Harvard. It wasn't Harvard. It wasn't none of this was none of the race sciences that fell in under this because there's a huge colluding of institutions, especially institutions where blacks were not included to go into because again these institutions um, were the ones that came out with this rhetoric that said they were subhuman. Now you have the huge colludings between propaganda on one side and the education system on the other side, saying, okay, well now these guys are inherently violent already because they have a 10% higher testosterone level than their white compatriots. And not only that, their frontal neocortex portion of their brain is not fully developed. Therefore, they are violent. They are inherently violent. And there's nothing you can do about it. And guess what? These people still take that and run with it. As idiotic as it sounds, they call us violence, but we're not the ones, dropping bombs and yada 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 yada. Okay, enough said about that. Now, I'm saying all of this right now, and we know that the drug war went out, the drug war came back came back in, but you got to appreciate the fact that it's being still constituted under the same kind of fashion for the same reason, largely targeting minorities. And when it target minorities, it makes a lot of minorities ineligible for work. And so now they're ineligible for work. Now they're turning to alternative methods of making a living because they're not going to go like, okay, well, I'm ineligible for work, so I'm just going to fold over and go back to the field. Because if you don't know that's the plan is always to keep you minorities out in the field because whites don't want to do it. Now, going back to what going back to it. Now you get the alternative ways of making a living because you're going to have to eat. You're going to have to eat. So and that includes selling drugs and everything. And it could be like when I was growing up in Detroit, I hear people saying, "Okay, well, it's a badge of honor to go to prison because there's nothing really going out for them. Their whole families being in prison, and good luck trying to get a security clearance for your whole family is being in prison." So you got to understand um, where the media is coming from when they say, "Okay, well, this person was um, a drug dealer. Well, this person was um, pulled over several times, or he was arrested several times, or he robbed the person, or he robbed the person this." Okay, well, it's like them saying, "Okay, well, we created this mess for these people, and on them trying to make a living, and in the crumbs and what was left of them trying to get out. Well, we busted him, and because he wanted to exist, we call him not a good person, and we've done that repeatedly with our teenagers, repeatedly. And we were teenagers too. We were teenagers back in the '60s. We were teenagers in the '70s, the '80s. A lot of people a lot far older than I am, but they were teenagers too, and they're treating the teenagers today far worse than they used to. And they're calling for tougher crimes. They're calling for tougher punishments so they can limit where they go if they are rehabilitated. Yes, I'm concerned. Yes, they're concerned, and you should be too. Now do something.